You're listening to the tale of two podcasters from the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge, brought to you by the outdoorsStation.co.uk.
This podcast is just one of a special series produced from a wealth of recordings made in May 2007 by two backpackers, Andy Howell and me, Bob Cartwright, as we made our way via two different routes from the west to the east coast of Scotland as part of the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge.
Here at RAB, we're pleased to be involved in the TGO Challenge, which is the perfect testing ground for our clothing and sleeping bags. RAB has a Scottish heritage and over 25 years' experience of making gear that performs in the varied weather of the Highlands, as well as gear for the highest peaks in the Himalaya.
Co-sponsors TGO, the Great Outdoors magazine, have been behind this May event since its inception in 1980. The framework and principle is totally unique. It isn't a race or a competition of any kind. The objective is to foster good fellowship amongst walkers within the framework of a challenging 200-mile expedition. The start consists of a series of sign-out locations on the west coast, from Torridon in the north down to Ardrishaig in the south. Each challenger, solo, couple or group makes their way via a high route, a low route or a mixture of the two across Scotland to finish anywhere between Arbroath and Fraserburgh on the east coast. There's a set 2-week window to do this in, and each participant submits their route for inspection prior to departure for safety and advice reasons. The places, however, are limited to 300, and details about the event, entry forms, past stories and photographs can be found in the October issue of TGO magazine and on their website. Each participant makes the challenge as easy or as hard as they wish. The extremes can be a remote high route, crossing wild country and not seeing another soul for days on end. Or a route which takes in the many social events, perhaps not camping at all and just using established accommodation all the way. Most people do a mixture of the two in different forms. This year I started with my wife Rose in the beautiful village of Ploughton, and Andy Howell with his partner Kate started from Strathcarron. We both carried recorders with us to capture our audio diaries and conversations which took place with other walkers as well as locals as we made our way to the east coast. Yes, this is the tale and adventures of two podcasters. Well, here we are on Sunday morning now. We think it's the 20th, but we're not too sure. It's got to that stage, which is always it's always a good stage to get to. Lose track of time. The campsite's it's sort of half cleared now. Actually, there was probably best part of 20 or so tents on here last night rather, and most people seem to have got on and just moved on just about now. Had a bit of a late start this morning, but it is nice when you've got roaring hot showers and a decent toilet to use to start the day with a bit of style. Everybody seems to be heading up via Loch Callater Lodge today and then bomb bursting out either over towards Braemar or over Jocks Road. I'm walking with Lee today. Where are we going today, Lee?
Down to, as you say, Loch Callater and then over to Jocks Road into Glen Clover.
Excellent. And do you think we'll stop for a cup of tea with Bill and Stan?
I think it's hard to pass, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they're very hospitable sort of characters, aren't they?
So.
Yeah, so that'll be nice. So we'll stop there for a brew. This bit about Jocks Road's got me a bit confused because I looked at the map today and although it's 900 metres, it didn't strike me as particularly tough. I don't know what it's like underfoot. Have you any idea?
I've not been across Jocks Road, but I think it's got quite a high plateau and probably that's navigation is a little bit tricky at times, and especially in bad weather, but otherwise I don't think there should be any problem.
I hope not. And the weather today looks, a bit more of the same really, but less rain hopefully.
Yeah, it don't look too bad really, does it? But it is Scotland, isn't it?
Absolutely. Another 10 minutes, it could be glorious sunshine. Anyway, so we'll potter off and probably switch back on around Loch Callater and see who's there in time for a brew. But we better get going, otherwise it's going to be a very long day.
Well, it's Sunday morning, and we've had the benefit of our rest day in Braemar, and today we head back to the hills, up to Callater Lodge, and then over Jocks Road and down towards Glen Clover. Kate, did you enjoy your rest day?
Yes, it was really nice to have a chance to just rest the slightly weary legs and feet, and get some good food and mix with people and hear other people's stories, and generally get myself feeling back like a bit more of a human being again.
There's no doubt that the rest day at this point is very welcome. It gives you a chance for your feet to kind of relax a bit, for the muscles to calm down. Also gets you a chance to get some real food inside you, which is quite good. And although there's not a great deal of choice in Braemar, I think we did okay. The old bakery on the high street looked after us at breakfast time. We had a lovely meal in the bistro in the village. And last night, I don't know, probably the best fish and chip shop in Britain, I think, in Braemar.
Yeah, the fish and chips are absolutely fantastic. Just freshly done and beautiful, and huge portions, and somehow hits the spot exactly what you need at that time.
I think Braemar came in for a bit of a stick last year, not least because the Fife Arms pub had changed hands, and there was a bit of a feeling that walkers weren't welcome there. But I overheard a conversation in the chip shop yesterday with the owner, which I thought was quite interesting, where there'd obviously been a debate locally about making challenges welcome, and if they weren't welcome here, they'd nip off to Callater. And there certainly aren't as many tents on this campsite this year as there were last year, but certainly the welcome, even in the Fife Arms, the staff were lovely, and it's been a good place to be this year.
Yeah, the Fife Arms is great, actually. I didn't detect any sniffiness about walkers. It was very, very friendly staff, very helpful, nice, warm, jolly atmosphere. It was great.
Yeah, certainly much improved on last year. We didn't eat there, though, mind you. Anyway, so just now we're just sitting here, just having a cup of tea. Just about to have one of our last meals of porridge, hopefully before we finish, and then we'll be up and over the hill.
Well, as you can hear, it is raining once again. It's 5 o'clock, and we're now settled in our little campsite, which I'll explain in a moment. And what a great day we've had, actually. I think, in all honesty, it's probably been the highlight of my trip so far. We left Braemar, as you know, 8:30, 9 o'clock-ish, and headed up to Loch Callater Lodge. On the way, we met Andy Howell and Kate, and also Colin Ibbotson, who's doing the challenge on a lightweight basis, and doing it very, very successfully, and very, very safely, and very wisely as well, in many respects. Very interesting guy to talk to. Hopefully we'll hear more from him in these podcasts. We got to Loch Callater Lodge, and Bill and Stan were as welcoming as ever. Lovely cup of tea on a roaring hot hearth fire. It's like a magnet. It draws you in, and you just stare at the fire and you think about the old times. And in my case, my grandmother used to live in a one-up, one-down house in Brierley Hill, as it happened, and she always had a roaring fire going, and the smell and the look and the sounds of it just took me straight back there. But a very, very cosy feeling, and we all felt very settled, of course, until the next batch of challengers came through, and so we made space for them, gave them thanks, and moved on to Jocks Road. Now, Jocks Road has got a bit of a question mark over it from the challenge control and also the route assessors, for different reasons, I think. But for one reason alone, it is absolutely beautiful. If you catch the weather right, which we did today, it was changeable with sunny periods. The Glen Callater looks magnificent, and I would say it's probably, from a beauty point of view, highlight of my trip so far. Absolutely wonderful. At the end of Glen Callater, there's a very, very steep climb in which the path is a bit iffy, and that's probably where the first question mark comes in for a lot of people carrying a reasonable weight. The climb is incredibly steep and will certainly take the wind out of you. You really need to be determined to get up that. Once on top, of course, there's a little bit of navigation work you have to do, and you have to be good on your map reading to make sure you come down the right valley and the right path. Otherwise, you could be in for a very, very boggy descent to the wrong place. But we managed it fine. It wasn't a big issue at all, and we came over the top in sort of sunshine and showers. A very, very cold wind, but glorious views. And certainly when you start to descend into Glen Dull, it becomes almost like the Pyrenees. Actually, it's a beautiful alpine pass, and there's an interesting little bothy on the way down, which is sort of dug into the ground, into the side of the hill, which is worth just a quick nosy to know that it's there if you ever need it. But we came down into Glen Dull, and certainly a steep descent down to the river there, which is the River Dull, I presume. Actually, let's have a look. Is there a name on there? No, I can't see, but it's Glen Dull. Anyway, the route assessors advised us all, in fact, individually, that the youth hostel that was at Glen Dull is now closed. The bunkhouse that was there is now closed. The campsite that was there is now closed. And I believe it's now all owned by the Balmoral estate. Camping is quite frowned upon. It's an awkward place to find a spot to camp. So we came through the Glen Dull forest very, very cautiously, in the sense that we were looking for a camping spot if we could for tents. And we have found one literally just by the side of the stream, side of the river really, before you get to Glen Dull Lodge. There's a little plateau which we've managed to secrete ourselves on and put up the 4 tents where we're all making our various brews. I'm sitting very comfortably at the moment in my little hut, or big hut actually, because everybody says it's huge, which it is. And I've got a wee dram of whiskey, which is left over from the last couple of days. My white box stove has just boiled up the water for my chili con carne, my homemade dehydrated chili con carne, which is now sitting in the pot cosy. And I thought I'd just record this quick little piece while I wait for it to reconstitute, and then I'll probably bring it back to the boil and chuck some rice in as well. And that will be a complete meal, homemade meal, which will be fit for kings. But it's been a very, very well enjoyable day. Great company with the 4 guys. Really good fun, good chit chat, good banter. We all appreciate the views and the scenery, and we certainly all appreciated the weather as well on the way through. So tomorrow we'll see us probably splitting into 2 groups, I guess. Possibly not. Carrying on through the forest at Glen Dull, and then possibly up the zigzag track by the car park to get onto the top as soon as possible, depending on where the track finishes, and then heading across to pick up the established footpath at Green Hill, over to Mucklecairn, and then down to Tarfside. And of course at Tarfside, we know we're assured of a warm welcome, bacon sandwiches and jacket potatoes, plus of course the socialising in the evening at the Masons Lodge. So it's all looking like a very pleasant end to the trip, really. It's at this point you start to sort of reflect on the trip that's taken you to get this far, because really the next 3-4 days is down to Tarfside, and then really the easiest route or the most enjoyable route out. And all of us are trying to get to the coast as close as possible as we can get without actually hitting the roads. So the only way we can do that is go through the Fetteroso forest. So we will probably go through as a group, ganging up, trying to work out the best route through and finding out the best track. A couple of people have advised us what to look for, but I won't say until we've actually done it, and then I can pass the information on to anybody that's interested in going that way. So I'm going to pour myself another dram, and I'm going to wait for my supper to be ready, and then once I've eaten that I might go and see the rest of the guys and see how they're getting on pitched down by the river here, as you can probably hear in the background, for a fairly pleasant evening, and it's just stopped raining, so fingers crossed it stays that way. Well, as we sit by the river here, enjoying one of the last evenings of the challenge, and probably one of the last wild camps of the challenge, certainly, we thought it'd be time for Andy and I to sit and chew the fat over equipment. So those not interested in gear talk, switch off now or move forward, because this is probably going to get very sad and anorak-y, but enjoyable all the same. One comment that seems to be being bandied around by various people has been there seems to be a thought that lightweight equipment is in fact dangerous on something like the challenge. And I've listened to a few comments, and I'm going to ask Andy for his thoughts on that and what he's heard.
Yeah, I've heard similar things, and Colin, who's with us at the moment, who is probably the ultralight king of this challenge, has been told he's been irresponsible. And it's a shame, really, because the people who are doing it are people in positions of responsibility almost. They're old-handers, but they've clearly never tried what it is that the rest of us are trying to do. And, let's be clear about it. It's like any specialism. It's not like the days when you buy a rucksack and it lasts you for 10 years, It's like any specialist sport or leisure where you have a range of different kit that you can use in different occasions. The interesting thing about it, from my point of view, is it's not particularly expensive. I mean, lightweight gear generally from some of these small manufacturers is good. I mean, your Go Light Pinnacle pack, which is getting a lot of attention, is probably one of the best value for money packs that you can buy around at the moment. So, yeah, it's a bit sad that, because there's no doubt that reducing your weight, and all of us that have done it have had that kind of road to Damascus experience, haven't they? For me it was trudging up a hill in the Pyrenees with God knows how much on my back and thinking I'm never ever going to do this again. And you want to enhance the experience, you want to walk longer, you want to be more comfortable, then it's got a lot going for it.
Yeah, I mean, today was a very, very good example. That steep climb that we did coming out of Loch Callater was a very steep climb, and I think we were discussing that we've all got a base weight around sort of 8 or 9k plus fuel and food and so on. And there was Colin with his 3.4 or 3.7?
3.8, I think it is.
3.8,
and he was just happy with that. he wants it down to 3.0 next year.
Let's just skip over that bit. The fact that he was just dancing and tiptoeing above us and just disappearing off into the clouds. Yeah. And all of a sudden you think, well, actually, what have I got in this rucksack? What really do I need? I mean, we're both keen to be safe and be sensible and be professional about our approach. And we've reduced the pack weight down. I mean, thinking about it, since when I first started 4 years ago doing the challenge, I've knocked 10k out of my pack quite easily, and I could probably knock another 3 or 4. You get to a point where you can't go much lighter, and there's a certain realistic approach you have to give to your own body weight as well. I mean, a stone off the stomach is easily lost and will help you, benefit you long term. But I think, as you say, the people that seem to be knocking the lightweight movement, the people are proving that it works in conditions that the rest of us have experienced, probably haven't tried it, and they're also, from my experience, carrying probably the heaviest packs.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. Last year on the challenge, on my own, my base weight was about 7 kilos, 8 kilos, which was fine. This year, doing it with Kate, we wanted a tent we could move around in the rain. We've got this solar, which is just over 2 kilograms, but split the weight between you and it's 1 kilogram each. The base weight is probably similar, and we're safe. We've walked across Scotland. Last year's weather was abysmal. This year's has been a lot nicer, but you're safe. You double up on clothing. You use it more than once. You go to a campsite or a B&B every now and then and have a shower and a clean, and you're fine. And I mean, there are choices though, aren't there? I mean, I don't think it would be easy to get the weight down a great deal more with the two of us, because comfort is an issue, and there are lighter two-people tents than this, but there's not enough room. There's not as much room, and I think you do need it when you're out in the wilds for 2 weeks. I took delivery of a new pack just before we came away, which weighs 500 grams, and in fact we took it up to Shropshire. We were there, and I kind of loaded it up for the challenge, and I needed to think about loading it, and actually because I'd only just got it, I decided to leave it at home. Next year it'll be coming with me. That's another half kilogram gone. If I choose a lighter tent, if I go to the competition maybe rather than the Acto, that's another 700-800 grams gone. You're knocking another 2 kilogram off a 7 kilogram base weight. It's doing okay, and you're still using a double skin tent, good durable rucksacks. Yeah, I think it's got a lot to commend itself. And you do notice this year there's a lot more interest in it. I mean, one of the things that's amused me somewhat is talking to people who've, cut all the bits off their packs and they've reduced this, that and the other, but their pack is still heavy. You think, well, it's nice to see people trying to reduce all these little bits of weight, but actually you could lose 1.5 kilograms instantly off that pack. So I'm sure we're going to see more and more of it, and maybe it's a generational thing actually, because I think all of us, and to be fair, we were all the same, weren't we? The thing about walking, it's an egalitarian sport. Anybody can do it. You buy a piece of kit and you expect it to last you for 10, 15, 20 years. But the thing that strikes me about the lightweight stuff, even when you have a range of different options, you might have 2 or 3 different stoves that you might use in different circumstances. The lightweight stuff is the cheapest gear on the market as well.
It's certainly getting that way, I think, and certainly with the bigger manufacturers now supporting it and obviously going down that route, we will see a lot more variety and probably a lot more affordable than it already currently is. I think most people that I talk to have a concern about their safety. If it's bomb-proof, therefore they will be safer in it. Let's have a 4-season boot as opposed to Terox or plimsolls, as some people call them. And I'm converted. I mean, I've changed out of desperation, if nothing else, to Terox to give them a go this year, and I am completely and utterly converted. I've got this far, I haven't got a single blister, and I normally I'm on Nurofen by now, just because of some sort of problem, and that's just one area that works for me personally. I think it's interesting as well that you and I have both done it solo, but also done it with our partners, and there's a different aspect that comes into there, because there's obviously a concern that your partner is comfortable and safe, and sometimes the weight increases slightly to make sure that's the case. But having said that, the other side of it is that you're taking somebody like Colin, for example. His ethos certainly is honourable one, in the sense that he's keeping his pack weight down, but he's buying all his food locally. Now, he's spending his money locally and selecting where he goes through, so he's got shops and so on, which is another way of doing it. You don't necessarily have to ship parcels ahead of yourself. You can actually spend the money locally and spread the wealth, as it were. So there is a variety of ways of doing it and achieving that significant weight loss.
We're all learning, aren't we? I mean, the wood-burning stove that Colin's got, and I've got one at home as well. I've thought about bringing it on the challenge. I thought about bringing 2 stoves because there were 2 of us, and then I thought, no, it's just dead weight. But actually, you're not carrying gas. You're not, and as you say, it's easier and easier to pick stuff up locally. And maybe we're going to be learning to do things in a very different way. I mean, I met people last year who sent gas canisters up in their food parcels, to hotels and things like that. Certainly, one of the things, looking at my weight this year, I mean, the obvious thing to do is to drop the gas canisters. That's an obvious one, and either take one of the meth stoves that you've been using, which is incredibly versatile, incredibly powerful, or the wood-burning stove. And Colin has just proved that you can use it all the way across Scotland. And what he does is, if he can't find any wood, he gets a stuffed sack and puts some dry wood in before he goes up high. And of course, dried wood weighs nothing at all anyway. So we're all learning to do it, and But I think it's about enhancing the experience, isn't it? It's about, walking longer during the day. It's being more comfortable, so you can look at the wonderful nature and the surroundings, taking in much more, fewer blisters, less agony.
Yeah, definitely the comfort factor at the end of the day. It's interesting. The last few days walking with you guys and Lee, I've been stopping a lot earlier because I've been working to somebody else's route plan rather than mine, and I put in some very, very long days because you want to achieve the miles and you want to get from A to B and so on. And I said to myself last year that the next time I do it, I wanted to make more of the camping. And I have to admit that I failed a bit really on the first few days to do that. The other thing, and tonight's a good example really, is the actual, you walk 200 miles across Scotland, the number of camping spots that you find, and fairly few and far between. Good ones, aren't they?
Yeah, I think in the Northwest Highlands it's easier, isn't it? I mean, we had some long days to start with. In fact, our route vetter was a bit worried about some of them, but we said no, we used to walk in those distances, but it meant we ended up, rather than camping low, we ended up at a high loch, something, wonderful kind of locations. But yeah, you're right, and it's certainly as you go east it gets more difficult to find them.
Yeah, certainly suburbia seems to be creeping into our minds as well as our physical surroundings here as well, so we're all very aware that the next few miles will be on the edge of somebody's property, and it starts to play in your mind that really you've now got to choose very carefully where you're going to stop and the campsites you use and so on. Coming back to gear again, and just being the pair of anoraks that we are, is there anything that you would improve on apart from certain items that were slightly less weight? Anything that you found you've completely not used this year?
No, I haven't taken enough. I haven't. Oh, well, actually, my spare pair of socks, I've only used those once, and that was walking into Braemar on Saturday night. No, I've done quite well this year. I've taken a synthetic base layer, which I tend to walk in through the day. I've got a second smart wool base layer, which I tend to use in the evenings or if the weather's right for it. I've got a Montane Kinetic mid layer, which you've been raving about for years, and you finally convinced me to buy, and it is that fantastic piece of kit. Just gets you going until you're warm enough. Featherlight wind shirt, which is fantastic. I've worn that nearly all the time, all the way across. And a rainproof jacket, which I've used, a handful of times. So, actually, there's not much in terms of clothing. What you do need is we've both got good down jackets on now, as we could. That makes a big difference in the evening. And if you're really cold at night, you can get inside it. My sleeping bag is only 300 grams. It's one of the minimus, nearly 400 grams, one of the PhD minimus bags. And this year's been a warm challenge, so I haven't noticed that at all. Last year was a bit colder, but it stood up fine. And if I was cold, I just put some clothes on, and do you miss anything? I don't know. Sometimes I think, well, maybe another kind of. I wonder about one of these synthetically filled jackets, maybe. But then on the other hand, no. I mean, no. I've been comfortable. I've been warm, and the trouble is with creating more space in your sack. You can always fill it with something, can't you? You can always think, yeah, it would be nice if I just had that extra jacket, just to give me the extra bit of comfort. Actually, really, what you find is that. You're looking for versatility when you go into civilization. I mean, last year I just took a base layer and a Paramo Velez smock, which worked very, very well and was actually a very light combination. The only problem was, though, because I was walking in the same thing as I went to the pub in the evening, and you wanted. So it's those kind of considerations that I think make the difference. But no, I mean, 2 pairs of socks, and I haven't really used the spare pair yet. So.
Yeah, I think we've been having this conversation as we go along today. I'm sort of, the Terox arrived just before I came away, which was a bit of a risk. So I brought my canoe shoes with me, which I used for river crossings in the past when I've had boots. I definitely wouldn't bring those again, as I don't need them. I'm happy with my socks, and the sealskins work well for the evenings, as you say, so you're walking around in wet shoes but you're not feeling it, and you don't feel any discomfort on that. I think I would change. I've got sort of a long-sleeved top and some Ron Hill bottoms. I'd probably change those for a silk top and silk bottoms if I needed those for evening wear again, and perhaps the Montane wind trousers if they look half smart, because they can cover up and also crunch down to nothing. But apart from that, the things that I find that fill my pack are toys. It's the phone and the phone charger and the batteries and the battery charger and the recording equipment. If I took that out, that's another 2k gone. And I think I could probably get mine down to about 5 or 6 and still have the comfort. And I agree with you, the down jacket in the evening is vital. I did bring the Montane gilet, the insulated gilet, which was... I did spend a lot of time walking in it, but actual fact, when I changed back to just using the wind shirt, the wind shirt with the hood, the light speed, it was a much better choice and much more practical. So that went back when Rose went back. Yeah, I reckon I could probably lose 2k fairly easily.
One of the things that I do think is important, I noticed a few people I've met this year wearing Terrox, maybe because of the hype that people like me have given them over recent years. And one of the things that I found a bit odd, I think, was that I don't think they'd really gone out and used them properly. They maybe used them before for a Sunday walk or something. But I really do think if you're going to buy this gear, let's be clear, it isn't for everyone. And certainly with something like Terrox, you need to take your pack out for a couple of nights over Easter or something like that, get your feet wet and see how it feels. So, I'd just encourage people to experiment, particularly with the trail shoes. If you don't like them, you've still got a good pair of trainers for leisure wear. But you do need to experiment, and you do need to understand how the stuff works. But that's not the same thing as saying it's not safe. It isn't. Once you've understood how it works, and actually it's not very complicated, it's not very difficult, it's not particularly skilled, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think going back to the Terrox again as well, people that think they're making a big leap if they have the Terrox and still carrying the same heavy pack probably won't be achieving an awful lot, because they're still having great impact on their feet, and the feet are still spreading and so on. I think there's make the significant move on a few pieces of equipment, and it will be a more pleasurable experience. And at the end of the day, this is what we're all saying, we're all enjoying the trip much more because we've got time we're fresh enough when we get to camp to enjoy it, as opposed to collapse and just sit there exhausted. What about the food stakes? How have you been doing on that front?
Great, we dehydrated all of our food again, which has worked very well. We've done 3 food drops. The last one is always the worst, because you're walking from Bremar and thinking of disasters that might happen. You take 4 or 5 days food with you, so a lot of food. But actually the dehydration has worked well, and we've just been sharing some stuff with some of the lads here, and the taste and the quality of it is just, there's no artificial additives. It's much, much nicer than, and there's, when you've had a long hard day, 12, 13 hours or something like that, which we were walking at the beginning, the notion that you've got something really nice and tasty at the end of the day is kind of a bit of an attraction, isn't it? So yeah, the dehydrations work well, food drops work well, and and we've camped every night. We haven't used B&Bs or anywhere this year. I realised last year that the campsites in Scotland are so good. They've all got drying facilities and laundry rooms. Actually, that's been good.
Like me, you've been obviously, as well as using the dehydrated food and your cooker, I've been using the pot cozies, and I've used Pot's Cozy along this time on the first 2 cooking systems that we were using. The first week we were trialling, which was the jet boil and the peak ignition, and now on the white box meth stove. And I just can't get over, even though I know how good it is, just how good it is. It's just incredible how warm it keeps the food for how long.
Yeah, it is. The classic way of rehydrating food, whether it's home dehydrated or commercial stuff, is to put a bit of water in it halfway through the day and let the agitation of the pack as you walk. Now, that's fine, but it isn't always easy to do that. And some days, if the weather's really bad or whatever, you don't do it. And so the other way of doing it is to boil and simmer away for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or so, and then let it stand for half an hour, which we've done this evening. You do that. You put
your standing stuff in one of those pop cosies, after half an hour, it's still absolutely piping hot, and everything is rehydrated perfectly. I mean, it's like all these things, isn't it? The simplest little idea. But I remember when you gave me that swatch of material, I thought, what on earth do you want with this? You know, and I thought, well, and it's superb. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, everything I've used it on so far has been a great hit. So, again, that learning process of business, you know, we've been using dehydrators together now for many years, and we've all had our own techniques. All of a sudden this material comes along and makes life even easier. So you've now got 3 choices on how you reconstitute food. You either put it in add water to it during the day and let it slowly come back together, ready for a simmer in the evening, or you boil it and simmer it for a long time using up fuel, or you boil it and whack it in a pot cosy and then leave it for half an hour while you sort your tent out and whatever else, and you've got a great meal at the end of it. Well, sort of to wrap it up, really, any other things that you've noticed other people have been using, you think, that's a good idea, I'll absorb that into my next trip?
Not particularly. The thing that's been fascinating me is the thought about what I do in terms of tents next year. You know, I love my Acto. It's a great tent, and you know, that's the reason you see so many of them on the challenge. But we were sitting in Bremar campsite during some very, very bad winds, watching the laser competition, which didn't seem to budge very much. That's an option. And I must say, the tarp tents. I mean, not only was Colin's tarp tent at Bremar when we turned up, but there's a guy, Rob, with a squall, a 2-person tarp tent, which actually, you know, looked very comfortable. Colin's looks a bit minimalist, you know, he's obviously at this extreme of the lightweight movement, but Rob's was much more comfortable, and I must admit, it makes you think. You know, the only thing about it is, of course, that if you have a really cold challenge, single skin tent is cold. But no, that's the main thing I want to think about next year. I've got a lighter pack. I just need to be able to use that. And worrying about tents, and I think is probably the next biggest challenge.
Well, I've been pleased with the Go Light hut too. Cavernous amounts of space, as you've commented yourself, for very, very little weight, and weighs and looks about the size of two Heinz baked bean tins. The downside is, here we are tonight, the midges are back out this evening, and sadly I'm liable to get a few bites tonight, which is a bit frustrating. But you can get a nest for it and so on. But if you choose your route carefully, or you choose your trip at the right time of year, an awful lot of tent for very, very little space. But it does have a few limitations.
Yeah, I don't know, part of me would love to take a tarp on next year's challenge, you know, and I've just got a 10x8 cyanide tarp from the States, which I've not even used yet, which we'll use when we go to the seaside in a few weeks' time. You know, because I think you probably need a bit more space, a bit like that hut. You know, it's enormous. I don't know whether I've quite got the courage to do that or not, but I don't know. It would be interesting to see. It's certainly not the case that this stuff doesn't work in the UK. It does. You've just got to learn how to use it.
Well, I was talking to Peter Goddard this morning, and he was saying that he'd bivvied across a couple of times on the challenge, and one year it'd been absolutely perfect, fantastic, no problems at all, had a great time, and the second time everything was against him, and it was a complete and utter nightmare. I tarped it a couple of years ago, and it was the time where the weather was glorious during the day but bitter at night, and as you quite rightly pointed out, tarps can be considerably colder than normal tents. So it's doable. It's definitely doable. It depends on your own level of hardship and how you want to travel, really.
I think the soft option is the laser.
Keep coming back to this,
don't
don't
you?
you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I can see it. You know, 9 kilograms for 2 skin tents. The only thing that worries me a bit about it is that last year I had
900 grams, not 9 kilograms.
Oh, yeah, sorry, 900 grams. Yeah. I had a close look at a load of them last year because I nearly bought one, and I did notice they were all owned by people who are quite short, and I do wonder about that. And I haven't really had a good chance to have a good look at one yet. Maybe at Taffside we'll find a few more. But That's the only thing that strikes me. I mean, my mate Malcolm Griffiths, I walked a bit with last year, he bought one for the weekend and took it back on Monday morning. It's just too small for him. So, but 900 grams, that would get that weight down. Yeah,
but if you don't have the comfort, the space for comfort rather, depending on the weather, of course. Well, we've covered most things. We've covered sort of clothing and tents and cooking systems and food, I suppose, and footwear, of course. The only other thing that I think does come across, and it comes across more obvious, I think, when you see somebody who's doing it for the first time, is something you can't control but you are aware of, is perhaps just the mental approach, the actual attitude towards doing it, the planning and so on. A good friend of both ours, Darren, sadly got himself unfortunately just ill when he first started, sadly, and I think he must be gutted he hasn't completed it. But he was really working himself up for the event. What would your comments be on how people should consider doing something like this for the first time?
I think although we're talking about lightweight gear and lightweight solutions, you do need to give yourself a good comfort margin. I've no doubt about that, and that's what worried me when Darren was trying to do it in the tarp. Brave lad that he is. You do need that. You need space at night. You need to be able to cook in your tent when the weather's really bad. You do need a bit of a comfort break. But I think the thing that strikes me most when I've watched people who picked up this lightweight kit this year is you've really got to try it out before. You've really got to use it. It's no good turning up on the challenge with something you've just bought because it's the lightest, whizzest thing. You've really, really got to know how to use it, I think.
Concludes this part of The Tale of Two Podcasters from the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge, brought to you by theoutdoorsStation.co.uk.